Welcome to the Whole Hog Podcast.
My main concern is I just want to do the best damn job I can for the University of Arkansas.
I got a question for you though, Scotty. You know that there's other players on our team besides Desi.
Look what we're slated to do. Look at what we've done the past 2 years and who we've got. Like, it's the greatest opportunity in the nation.
Man, why not Arkansas?
Now, here's your host, Seth Campbell.
Welcome into the Whole Hog Podcast. I am your host, Seth Campbell. I want to thank you so much for joining us. We've got a loaded show for you today. First off, we've got former Razorback and former Dallas Cowboy, Felix Jones. He's going to be joining us to talk about, we've got tons of stuff from his time at Arkansas all the way to what he is doing right now. We've also got Matt Jones and Scotty Bordelon. They're going to talk about what they've seen so far in scrimmages and fall camp, and then they're also going to talk a little bit about what to expect. We got a lot of special teams talk in this week, so a lot of good stuff there. And we're also going to hit some basketball. Basketball announced when they are going to start their season. The NCAA announced that, but also there's a lot more information to dive into that as well. So we're going to get down into a little bit of the nitty-gritty of that. So make sure to stay with us there. But first, let's start off with Felix in his interview. Felix, let's start at the beginning. What was it like for you growing up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and going to Booker T?
Man, I would say it was a lot of fun. Man, it was a great thing, man. Growing up in Tulsa, man, I grew up in a community that loved us. You know, I had my parents, and they cared for me and what I did and my well-being, and I had siblings that did the same, and it was an awesome upbringing, for me. So especially getting a chance to go to the Booker T, where they have a lot of history there in Tulsa, a lot of history, with people of color and so say black folks, because that's what it was, for a lot of years. So, just going to a school like that had a lot of culture, going for, the people in that community, I learned a lot of things. I learned about a lot of players, a lot of, people prior, a lot of great coaches, a lot of great teachers, a lot of great, influential people that, always came back to the, not just the only Booker T, but to the communities they grew up in. And, just that type of atmosphere, and just learning, from what the history, of me growing up and the people that I was surrounded by, it was amazing. But, after, you grow up and you learn about more of the, the deep history that, you grew up in those streets, it becomes a little scary that, after all these years, you didn't know that, you had major history around the place you grew up. And I mean, basically in the neighborhoods, in the house and the land that you go outside and play on in the streets. And, just kind of sitting back and thinking about that, it was special. It's special, that we're able to still kind of carry on, certain things that, we tried to have, in early history of Tulsa, the Black Wall Street part about it. So, from that whole aspect of, growing up in Tulsa and, growing up, learning the history about the streets you grew up in and, being able to contribute going forward, I can't tell you how blessed and, fortunate that is.
Well, let's take you back a little bit, Felix, to the time when you are going through high school and you're getting recruited by major schools. I think I saw where you had offers from Oklahoma State, Arkansas, of course. What was your recruiting process like, and why did you choose the University of Arkansas?
The recruiting process, man, it was very stressful. I can honestly tell you that. As a high schooler, I mean, you don't really you really didn't think that the pressure would be that intense, but you know, I can honestly tell you it was stressful because you know you want to be able to, you know, play on a team that's is definitely going to give you a chance to, you know, show the talents that you have, and also, you know, look forward to the dreams of, you know, academic, you know, accomplishing, you know, graduating and, you know, add another achievement to your belt. That is definitely something that, you know, that was, I had to think of, you know, as I was still in high school, you know, trying to, you know, get myself prepared, you know, as far as let's say, you know, the testing side of it and and doing all the college qualifications and, you know, all those things and making sure your grades is on point. Right. You know, so you can balance yourself and get that scale, you know, to make a good test score just so you can qualify. I mean, just learning all those detailed things, you know, that you have to do. And that was one of the, you know, issues that I had too, is not knowing about that test early on. And I also have a camp now. I know I'm jumping way above, you know, where I'm talking about.
Go ahead.
But I have a camp that I've been hosting for the last 10 years. And, you know, we try to, you know, stress the point of doing certain things a lot sooner, you know, than later, you know, because it kind of alleviates the stress later on trying to get over the hump of getting those qualifications. And that's one thing that we stress, because if you can get that out the way a lot sooner, man, so many schools can get in contact with you a lot sooner, and you can, you know, get the opportunities that you are given, you know, a lot sooner. So it's those are some of the things that I'm trying to change, you know, instead of stressing like I did, because a lot of athletes grow up in Tulsa and come out of that area, and you know, if I can just kind of get one or two that's in the area that I was in, and you know, and push them to do certain things a lot different, that kind of stress-free their journey. That's the intent that I'm on now, and that's what I want to push, and you know, for the people who's in the area or in the same predicament, you know, I was coming up. So, I mean, as far as what you were saying, going back to the question, man, it was, like I said, it was difficult, but it was also a lot of fun. I got to see a lot of campuses. I got to see a lot of different coaching, you know, just kind of feel my way and see what schools fit me, you know, as far as the living, you know, it's a lot of detailed things that go into, you know, that I didn't even know. But, you know, as far as your comfort level and going somewhere that's not your home, and, you know, relying on the coaches to, you know, to kind of coach you and direct you in the way that you want to be directed. And also, you know, just be, you know, a good citizen, you know, learn to, you know, go out and meet new people, do new things, you know, and you know, and have fun while you're at it. So those are the things that I kind of considered when I was doing, you know, my Arkansas or my college, you know, visits, and trying to narrow it down to what's comfortable for me. And Arkansas fit everything that, you know, I was trying to I continue on, you know, doing the football journey and, you know, education journey, and it fit me the best. So, you know, and it definitely was the right choice.
Yeah, I think that me and a lot of other people would say so as well. When you were looking at coming to Arkansas, did you know that a guy like Darren Mcfadden was also coming in your same recruiting class?
I actually was, you know, trying to figure out who my teammates were who they were going to be, coming in definitely. And he played a position. He was a highly recruited guy. So how could you not know who Darren Mcfadden is? Going into Arkansas. So I knew who he was, and I was just trying to make sure I was on my game when I got there. So I knew I had to compete, and that's what it was all about. And like I said, it was all about the comfort level. Once the comfort level of living and going to school was there, the competition of football was the thing that got me to this point. So that was the thing I had kind of tucked away was just make sure you work out and do the things you need to do, keep yourself healthy, so when you get there, you can show the coaches that you belong there. And, I always had that mindset of wanting to be the best. And, I did my research of what I was coming up against. And, I knew who Darren Mcfadden was. So, it was a joy that, somebody who was at a higher point, or who was rated higher, or, viewed as a better player, in the same class I'm coming into, it just made things even more, intense for me as to go out and work harder and, be better. So, it was a challenge, and I was ready to take it on head on.
Well, Felix, I think I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up, while I have you here, Halloween in the Flintstones costume. Whose idea was that? Was it yours or was it Darren's?
Man, I can honestly say I don't think neither one of us came up with it. We were just, I think we were sitting in the training room, and man, somebody brought it up. Honestly, that's how I remembered it. We were sitting in there, and somebody brought up the idea, why don't y'all dress up? Then we started talking about costumes. We went through a few costumes, and I think we was like, oh no, I don't think that one worked. Let's do it. So I think it came up with the idea collectively, somewhere I think it was a training room somewhere. So, once that happened, man, we ended up on ESPN. It was kind of, it was like, wow, I didn't think it was going to be like that. Mm-hmm. I didn't think I was going to see myself on TV in the costume, so that was kind of, it's just a little extreme. I guess I didn't know how important as a person we were at that time. I would say.
Yeah, it definitely made its rounds on the television. Felix, when you decided to come to the University of Arkansas, the university was struggling. The year before you got there, they only won 5 games. Your freshman year, they only win 4. What really clicked for y'all in 2006?
The older guys that were there. We had Jamal. We had I remember Kelly. I remember we had so many other older guys that were kind of like will hold be motivated to us, and that's I think that was the thing for us. We were just trying to get in there and show that we can play with a lot of these guys, and for me it was just I was the new kid on the block. I'm starting at the bottom again, and as far as seniority, just being a leader in the group and knowing how to be a college football player, and I was coming in learning, and it was just us coming together and just wanted to be a part of the team, and it brought the best out of us. And all we were doing was playing football. Honestly, that's all I could say about what motivated us, is that we had the team spirit already there. It was just adding the pieces to kind of help contribute. And Coach Nutt, man, did a great job of getting us together and motivating us, and letting us know that we can compete with the best of them, and be the best. And that type of coaching and that type of motivation is what led me to Arkansas. And, we just want to go out there and play. And, all the guys came together, started playing, football. We were having fun. It was a lot of fun. And I think that's what, got us to that point to where, we were just clicking. Everything was happening at the right time, and plays were being made, and it was just awesome to be out there. And like I said, it was the coaching, that kind of helped. Coach Shivas, Coach Allen, it was a lot of guys that that was there. Coach Jack that kept us in great shape. Man, we were just we had no choice but to go out there and play our best and beat the Razorbacks, and shoot, we enjoyed it.
You mentioned Coach Nutt. He's a very motivational guy from everything that we've seen from him. Do you have any stories or memories of playing for Coach Nutt?
My favorite memory with Coach Nutt is when Coach Nutt came. He visited. He used to come visit, Tulsa. And one time he came to visit, my house, in which I think he done a lot of football players, but he came to visit. But he did something that was different that a lot of coaches didn't do. And he just wanted to see how I was living. He asked a lot of questions. He talked to my parents, as if he was here to, help and, be a guide and a mentor. And, he was a fun guy, man. Coach Nutt is, he's fun, be around. And his coaching style is fun. Like you said, he's motivational. So it makes you want to go out there and hit somebody even harder. So, just that his energy. His energy is what got me in. That's what my favorite memory about Coach Nutt. I mean, even though we had a lot of memories during the seasons that we had together, but that's what got me, and that's what I always think about as the time he came and met my family. He sat down, he talked to us, and we laughed, we had a good time. He went up to my space, my area, my room. And he was the only coach to do that, to kind of see how I lived and, the area that was, I was brought in. And, I thought I got the sense that he could relate and, see that I was trying to get out and, be better and help my family and do something in life. So just that type of energy that he brought that day. I felt that, and I wanted to play for that coach. So, that helped out on a lot of things, and definitely said something that I can always remember Coach Nutt with, because, that always stuck with me, right? Him coming down and, being a person. That's it.
Yeah, he was awfully good at just being a person that you can relate to. All right. In 2007, Felix, everybody talks about Darren's game, and rightfully so. He put up over 300 yards against South Carolina. But, I mean, you had almost an impressive game, throwing up 177 yards and averaged 12.8 yards a carry. My question is what was the game plan for South Carolina that y'all were able to rush for 570 yards in that game?
Oh, man. If I could remember, man, I just really think the motivation was just being the best running backs in the league. I mean, in that SEC league, we were going up against another good running back. I can't remember his name right off. And on the South Carolina squad, and we just felt like we weren't getting the recognition that we needed in the SEC. So I think that's what motivated, as far as myself, that's what motivated me, just to be the best player And it was I believe it was a homecoming game anyway. We had a lot of alumni come in, and it was just a real important game, and a game of fundamentals and us just being the better running backs that game. As far as Darren had a very explosive game. He had a few great runs, that was over 50 yards, and that right there was just we really wasn't thinking that would happen, but with Darren anything can happen, and it was just a hell of a game. Actually, man, I really can't tell you, man. We just want to be the best offense, be the best running backs, be the best team that day. And I think we proved our point. That we was the best team that day, and that's all we wanted to do. And it was a very important game anyway. Every game is, but like I said, it was homecoming, and a lot of people were coming in, and I think we were on TV. It was just a lot of motivating things that was happening at that time, and we just wanted to show the world that we are here too. We want to be talked about as well, and I don't think that was the whole group's feeling, but I just felt like, since we got that stage, let's go out there and perform. And, we did.
Felix, I don't know how much you keep up with the Arkansas football team now, but obviously you do know that they are struggling. Do you see any similarities between the team that you came in on that had, just won 5 games and won 4 games your freshman year, and this team now that is trying to get an SEC win for the first time in 3 years?
Man, I can't tell you if there are similarities there, but as far as the motivational factor, I can see that. I can see that in our new coach. What's his name, man? Can you help me out?
Yeah, Sam Pittman.
Yeah, Coach Pittman. Yeah, I can see the same, motivational characteristics that Coach Nutt had, and Coach Pittman, as far as, let's see these guys out there working and let them know that, we are good. That was great. Let's do that better. Let's keep working on this, but we can improve that. And let's try to improve it now, or do something to try to improve it. It's never nothing that tear you down motivationally or emotionally, anything that way. So I can see those things, those characteristics with that coach, Coach Pittman, and I really think he can turn that team around with the players he's getting and the recruiting he's doing. He's getting a lot of, top, good stars, top 3, top 4 type caliber players. And, it looks good for the future. If, like I said, if the coach can motivate us, the Razorbacks to be great, to be the Razorbacks. And, so I really see that with Coach Pittman. And, I can't wait to see how things, turn out more in the season.
Moving on to your pro career, Felix, when you were a part of the Cowboys, what was that like, and what was that like getting to play for an owner like Jerry Jones?
Oh man, it was awesome. Jerry Jones, he's a great businessman. Man, he definitely treated me, great when I was with the Cowboys, and I was definitely, blessed and honored that, he chose me to be a Cowboy. So, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It was, a dream come true. living in Oklahoma, you see a lot of the Cowboys. And, growing up, I watched the Super Bowls. I watched the Cowboys play. I watched Emmitt Smith and Michael Irv and Troy Aikman, Deion Sanders. I watched these guys, I was watching them growing up, wanted to be like them. So it was an honor that, I got a chance to, get to know Jerry Jones, and, he, blessed me with the chance to be with the Cowboys. So, it was a blessing and an honor, and, something that, I always be thankful for.
Felix, when you look at your time in the NFL, what was the main difference between college and NFL for you?
It was a lot of things, man. Time management, finances, just things that you're blessed and fortunate to get, but you still have no education on how to handle certain things. It was more of a off the field, complication than it was on the field of anything, more than anything. Just trying to make sure that, you have everything in order with your family, friends, definitely take care of yourself. So that was a big adjustment. Not only, going to a different playing league, a different speed of football, just a different, a whole nother level of play. It just wasn't just say HUD, and try to outrun the outsider's defender. It was actually learning, how to get inside and how to be a better running back. It was a lot of detailed work. Trying to, be a better football player, be a better educated football player, So, on both sides, on and off the football field, it was an adjustment. But, you get to learn, just with trial and error. And you do your best not to have a lot of error. So, you try to make the mistakes minimal as much as possible. And, that's what the learning curve was for me is, just how to adjust in a new, lifestyle. So, those things were, pretty much the hardest, about the adjustment from college to the professional league.
Very good. Well, Felix, you came on here to talk about, a little bit about NFL votes. So why don't you go ahead and tell us what you're doing through the National Football League and what you want to tell everybody?
Well, as far as voting, just want to let everybody know that, to go register, definitely register, find your polling place and then, vote. Change the narrative. If something or someone's in the way of making your community better, go vote and change it. One thing, that we can do is try to make our community better, and that's, doing what we can and getting the right people in there that has the same mindset or that has the same, outlooks on what you see as a community that will make your place of living better. So, first of all, do your research. Find out who those people are. and do your best to get them in the places they need to be, so your community can strive and be the best place of bringing up, the next generation of leaders and, the next generation of, football players, or who the next generation of doctors, the next generation of lawyers, or the next generation of, political people. So, create the narrative and change the narrative, to where it fits your standards of living. So, we have to do something about it, and we can change what's close to us in our neighborhoods. So if we, get out there and do what we need to do to change it, let's change it.
And then if I'm not mistaken, you're doing a big portion to change things kind of in your hometown of Tulsa, correct?
Oh, yeah. I'm sure a lot of things have been out there about the Tulsa massacre, race massacre in 1921. Well, the centennial is upcoming next year, and I think we're gonna have a lot of traffic in Tulsa, and I have, in the area is formerly known Brady Mansion, which was built by the founder of Tulsa, and he was a participant in the massacre as well. And I just wanted to kind of spread the light on how much influence he had on that. So, just having that said, it's the formerly known Brady Mansion, known now as the Skyline Mansion, and we're just trying to, like I said, change the narrative on how things are, looked upon, and try to, bring back our rich history that was in the city of Tulsa.
Well, Felix, we greatly appreciate your time here. I want to leave you with this last question. When you've kind of had some time now after your career is ended in the NFL to look back on your legacy in the NFL, and especially at the University of Arkansas, what do you think your legacy is as a Razorback at the University of Arkansas?
Oh, man. Just hopefully I can leave a legacy of, just being a person of good standards, civilized citizen, great person in the community, a person who's trying to make a change, who's showing change, or who's trying to do it, or who's trying to show you better than he can tell you. So, just trying to be something different, and, something that's trying to, make something of itself. So, man, I guess, just try to be the best Felix Jones I can be.
That's very well said. Well, Felix, I appreciate you taking the time, man.
No problem, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem.
WholeHogSports.com has the largest, most experienced staff of reporters covering sports in Arkansas. Football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. You'll find it at WholeHogSports.com. The website includes up-to-minute news, daily commentaries, and award-winning photography from the staffs of Hogs Illustrated and the Democrat-Gazette. For subscriptions, call 1-800-757-6277. That's 1-800-757-6277. Or visit us online today. WholeHogSports.com.
Welcome into the Whole Hog Podcast. Seth Campbell, joined alongside, as always, Scotty Bordelon, and our new addition to the Whole Hog Roundtable, Mr. Football Guy himself, Matt Jones.
You realize I started the Whole Hog Podcast many, many years ago.
I don't doubt it. You seem to start a lot of things that we get to do here, and so we're awfully excited to have you along here. and we're going to talk Razorback football, obviously, as they are gearing up. By the time when the podcast comes out, it'll be a week and a day. That is 8 days, gentlemen, before football happens at the University of Arkansas, which is kind of wild to me. Also gets me really excited. But we're going to talk a lot of football. We're going to play a game playing the percentages. We're going to ask these guys, what is the percentage chance that some things happen throughout the football season? They're going to give us their expert opinions. And also, we'll talk a little bit of college basketball, because college basketball announced when they are going to start playing. And we got some good information there. So a lot of stuff to talk about, but let's just jump right in before we get to playing the percentages. Guys, we got to talk to Grant Morgan this week, and he was named a captain by Sam Pittman and the coaching staff, which, if you follow Tom Murphy on Twitter, means he's Captain Morgan.
I sent him a text right after the captains got announced, and I just sent him Captain Morgan in all caps, and it took him like 9 hours to get it to Twitter.
Scotty, it's the older generation now. It takes him a second.
I guess he was busy.
But so Captain Morgan is out there, but at the linebacker position, he might have to play a lot of snaps, just depending on who the Razorbacks start. And that's going to be the first question that I asked to you guys, and I'll first start with you, Scotty. Is linebacker the thinnest spot on the team? But I think we answered that. But who do you see as the top linebackers for the Razorbacks this year?
I don't know that it's necessarily the thinnest position, just because you've got bodies there, like Bumper Pool, Grant Morgan, Hayden Henry, Andrew Parker, D.D. Edwards. Like, you've got some dudes there. I think you probably throw Zach Zemos into that group too. Zemos and Hayden Henry have been working this week kind of in their own group with Barry Odom, kind of getting some. I would assume the reason they're getting that individual work is, they're going to be kind of that hybrid linebacker position, whenever Barry Odom decides to go with a 3 linebacker look. But I think linebacker, like Grant Morgan said this week, that he's been, like, obviously he's not going to say anything otherwise, but Andrew Parker and D.D. Edwards getting some valuable work this preseason. I don't think that hurts at all. But I think you're going to be leaning pretty heavily on Bumper Pool, Grant Morgan, and Hayden Henry. I think it's pretty cool to see Grant Morgan be a team captain. He's River Valley kid. He came here as a walk-on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's really worked his way up, earned a scholarship, and now he's earned the respect of new coaching staff and apparently his teammates. I mean, it was a team vote, right?
Yeah, it was a team vote.
So, I mean, I think that speaks well to what Grant's doing. If you're juiceful, you're useful. I think that's what he says, right?
Oh no, that is.
I heard somebody say that on a broadcast the other night. I think it was during NBA playoffs. One of the commentators said, "If you're juiceless, you're useless." So it's a variation.
It's the same thing
of that.
He definitely got it from Grant Morgan, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think Grant
or Drew.
Yeah, because Drew was the creator of the juice when he was here. But yeah, I think that linebacker group, you're going to be leaning pretty heavy on your top 3 guys, I would think.
And you didn't mention Levi Draper. I think he fits into that rotation too. It was interesting to listen to Sam Pittman's radio show this week, that he's still kind of harping on the fact that there's not enough separation between the first team or what should be the first team linebackers and whoever their backup is going to be. That's not a good sign, in my opinion, as you get this close to the season. Sometimes that's the case. That may be the case at Georgia, but there's an obvious talent difference between the linebackers they have at Georgia and the ones they have at Arkansas. And so, I think that hearing him say that is an indication that they just haven't had somebody step up and really take a job yet. And I think that's a little bit concerning at linebacker. And what I think you're going to see, and maybe you're going to see this anyway, but I just think you're going to see a heavy rotation at linebacker this year. I don't know that you're going to see anybody like now injuries or quarantines might necessitate otherwise. But I don't know that you're going to see anybody like Dejon Harris, who just never came off the field, played 95% of the snaps. I'm not sure you're going to see that type of Iron Man type linebacker on this team this year. It's interesting, going back to the team captain vote for a minute, that yes, the players voted on it. I've talked to coaches though before who have had team captain votes and they didn't like the result, and they just didn't have captains that year. And so I think that maybe it's a little bit different with this coaching staff. I don't know, but there are times where coaches will come in and say, I don't know if that's the best vote for team captain. And Sam Pittman seems to really endorse the 4 that they picked this year, and those 4 being Grant Morgan, Jonathan Marshall, Felipe Franks, and Rakeem Boyd. And I thought it was interesting on his radio show where he talked about, because they're all seniors and they all come from different backgrounds, they kind of all can bring a different perspective to the team. Felipe Franks can bring the perspective of being in a winning program and having won a big bowl game. Rakeem Boyd can bring the perspective of, starting at A&M, fizzling out there, going to a junior college and coming here. Grant Morgan was a walk-on. Jonathan Marshall is a player who has already got his degree. So there's some different backgrounds there, and I think that was kind of an interesting perspective by Sam on his radio show this week to talk about the different opinions that they can bring to the room because of their diverse backgrounds.
So we don't think, or you don't think that Bumper Pool might be able to stay on the field like maybe
I'm not saying
the
that
same way that Scooter did?
Well, I'm not saying that he can't. It's just I don't know that he's playing to that level that they're going to want to keep him out there every play like that. Maybe I'm wrong. And again, with the way that the quarantines or injuries work, if you don't have a lot of depth at a position, then they can change things really fast.
Good stuff there, guys. As we talk about the linebackers and you move on, it's just going to be interesting. I thought the point that Matt said about with the separation, you kind of want separation at a program like the University of Arkansas at this time in the season, because that means that you have guys that are clear-cut starters and you feel like can compete at the SEC level. And it's just different at, say, Georgia rather than Arkansas, because the guys that are coming through at Georgia, if they're similar or can't pull away, you feel like the talent level is there, whereas at Arkansas, you feel like the talent level may be just a little not as great.
I thought Sam Pittman, and I keep going back to his radio show. If you haven't listened to his radio show, go check it out, because it's an entirely different show than what you had under Chad Morris. Chad Morris was, number one, he didn't do the entire show. It'd be a couple of segments with him, and then they'd bring players in. They'd come back to Chad at the end. Sam Pittman's doing an hour long. They haven't had players in it. But Morris kind of filled his show up with just a bunch of cliches and very vague insight into the team. I feel like Sam is a lot different. And I thought last night he made a really good point when he was talking about Ricky Stromberg, and that if Sam was at Georgia, they probably wouldn't have recruited Ricky Stromberg, because when he was coming out of Tulsa Union, he was about 265 pounds. And he said at Georgia, we could have recruited the guy who's already 320 or 340. And at Arkansas, you may not have that luxury right now. And so he talked a lot about but he was really happy with that the previous staff had recruited Stromberg, because they feel like he's going to be a really good player for them, moving down the line. But that goes to your point, Seth, that it's a lot different with what you're dealing with on this roster versus what you're going to be dealing with most of the rosters that Arkansas is going to see this year.
All right, guys, moving on. We got to talk to Scott Fountain and some AJ Reed this week, some special teams talk, which when you think about it, a lot of people want to put that at the bottom of the list as far as spots on the football team. But if your special teams are good, you might just find yourself winning a lot of games this year. Not a lot of games, but you can win more games.
You can flip a game on its head with special teams, yeah.
Toss-up games are often determined by what happens on special teams.
And something that I thought was interesting, that if you've kept up with Whole Hog Sports on the website, then you've definitely read this, is Arkansas has a special teams coordinator. That is what Scott Fountain does. A lot of teams will like to utilize maybe a tight ends coach as a special teams coordinator, or a linebackers coach as a special teams coordinator. And the fact of that they're doing more than one job. Arkansas has a designated special teams coordinator. And from all of the talk from preseason, Matt, it really seems like that is paying dividends for those guys that are specifically designed to work in special teams.
Well, we'll see when the games come around, but it's clearly a different focus on special teams than what we've seen in the past. I mean, how many people said for years Brett Bielema needs a special teams coordinator? He had a graduate assistant who oversaw special teams, I think, every year that he was here. And Arkansas didn't have a special teams coordinator in Chad Morris's first year, and they had the North Texas play that everybody remembers. And last year, they gave Barry Lunney the title of special teams coordinator. I mean, Barry Lunney never coached special teams before last season. Not to say that he wasn't involved. I mean, every coach is involved in different aspects of special teams, but it's not that person who, kind of specializes in that area like Scott Fountain has. You look back through Scott Fountain's career, he's been special teams coach for many, many years. I think even going back to maybe his time coaching with Bobby Bowden at Florida State, was a special teams coordinator at Auburn when they had their kick six. He was the one who told Gus Malzahn, hey, maybe you want to take a timeout here and get that return man back. And Chris Davis had maybe the greatest play in the history of college football. So this is a guy who's got a lot of expertise in that area, who's been doing this for a long time. And, I think when you put a person in charge of special teams, you're going to have more success there. I think that if you pay more attention to a position, that position is going to be more successful than if you don't. You think back to even Petrino's years. John L. Smith was their special teams coordinator, and for all the laughing that people do at John L. Smith, their special teams were pretty darn good during Petrino's years. You think about Dennis Johnson set kickoff records for Arkansas, and Joe Adams set punt return records, and they had a good kicking game, and they were always really sound in the special teams. And you go back to those games that are toss-ups. I think about games, like the 2010, 2011 season. There were a lot of games that were really, really close, and I think special teams had a say in some of those games that they won. Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good deal having somebody that oversees special teams, and I'll be interested to see how this season goes, having Scott Fountain. I think that some of his philosophies are interesting. For instance, they're not going to have Jack Lindsey as their holder this year. They're going to have George Carrington, who's their punter, and the reason for that is that during most of the practice, Jack Lindsey is going to be working out with the quarterbacks, whereas you've got the snappers and the holders and the punters and the kickers all working together, maybe even in the stadium or on a different field somewhere. And so maybe you want to have that guy who's going to be able to put more focus into holding. Not to say that Jack Lindsey was bad, because he had a pretty good run there as a holder for Connor Limpert. But it's just those little nuances that I think are interesting, and I think where you're already seeing the maybe the dividends being paid off by having a coordinator in that area.
Yeah, I think just one of the main takeaways I got from Scott Fountain the other day was he was asked about just the importance of having a designated special teams coordinator, and he said he's been at programs in the past where they have and where they haven't. And when the programs that didn't have one, you see like the wide receivers coach is designated to work with like kickoff coverage. Well, one thing Scott Fountain figured out was, that receivers coach cared about kickoff coverage, but he cared more about his receivers. Mm-hmm. And so he wasn't paying he wasn't giving kickoff coverage the amount of detail and attention that maybe it warranted. And so, I mean, he still splits up duties. So like he's got, I think, 6 guys, and I'm not certain. He went down the list on the coaches that he's got working with various special teams groups, but I think he said, he's got a special teams meeting, and he gets input from different people, from the different coaches, from the players, and then he's got a separate meeting with just the specialists. And so like the attention to detail is definitely there, and I love listening to Scott Fountain talk just because like his drawl. Like he's from Alabama.
He's from Alabama.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, you can definitely hear it in his voice, and I love that he calls special teams. He just calls it teams, and I think that's kind of like the football guy, the attention to detail. I think you're going to get a lot of that from him, and he kind of explained too. Early in fall camp when we talked to Traylon Burks, he said that Scott Fountain and Justin Stepp were working with him on how he catches punts and kickoffs, and he said Traylon said it was going to be a work in progress because he's done kind of the over the head style type receiving like since junior high or since Pee Wee football. So it's going to take some time to kind of beat that out of him. But he respects Scott Fountain enough to be like, hey, you say you want me to do this, I'm going to do this. He explained it to him, and Clay wrote about it a couple weeks ago too. If NFL teams are looking at a punt returner who catches the ball normally or in a traditional way, kind of in with the body, kind of tucks it tight to his body, NFL teams are going to look, and both guys, I guess the NFL teams are examining, are both explosive, big-time playmakers with the ball in their hands, but one of them catches the ball in a funky manner or in a non-traditional way, they're probably going to go with the guy that does it traditionally. So I think he's making some waves, I think, with special teams too. So it's been pretty interesting.
It's like anything else. If all things are equal, you're going to take the player who shows better technique or better better traits at a position. Going back to another point that you made, Scotty, you've always got to have the other assistant coaches that are involved in special teams, and I think this is where special teams get overlooked sometimes. Is that you've got say you've got a punt coverage, right? Well, on that punt coverage, you've got your snapper, you've got your gunners, you've got your shield that stands in front of the kicker, you've got the kicker himself. And so there's all these different, areas that have to be addressed. And I don't know that, if you say punt coverage and punt return and kick coverage and kick return, do you really want one coordinator coaching all 44 of those positions? No, you don't. And so that's where you have to divvy up the work between the other assistant coaches. But having that one coordinator who can kind of oversee that instead of just having everybody kind of show up on special teams, I think that's where you're seeing a big difference right now.
Yeah, and the coaches that are working with Fountain on special teams are Justin Stepp, who's a receivers coach, Sam Carter is the DB coach, Jimmy Smith, running backs coach, Ron Rhodes, linebackers, and John Cooper with tight ends. So you got a pretty good group working with Fountain there.
I'd be willing to bet all 5 of the coaches played special teams when they were in college.
Yeah, I don't think I'd bet against you there.
Yeah, I don't think he's just like plucking guys randomly from the group of assistants.
No,
it's probably pretty well thought out.
The only thing that's sad about Traylon Burks actually fielding the ball correctly is there's going to be no more surprise videos like from Scotty on Twitter of the Auburn guys that were really shocked about.
Yeah, they're pretty amazed
at how Traylon fielded the ball. That's RIP to those days.
They were not alone in that. Like, it was about every week they were making broadcast players were making a big deal about it.
All right, guys, let's wrap up our football talk today with a little game. I think Scotty and I have already played it once, but it was a while ago. I'm going to do this, Scotty, instead of making you play Guess the School this week.
Thank goodness.
So I think I was about to say, I think that you'll be happier with this.
We're on a bye week
yeah.
with that game.
Yes.
Throw it in the trash.
Hey. We still have to learn about our fellow schools from all across the country.
Maybe the game's on quarantine or the
2-week hiatus.
Yeah.
Unless you're the Big Ten and then you need 21 days. Okay, let's play the percentages.
Let's play the percentages.
May the odds be ever in your favor.
Never tell me the odds.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
All right, guys, so I'm going to give you a question. You're going to tell me how likely it is, all the way from 0% to 100%. It's a surefire thing. We're going to start with what I wanted to consider a softball, but it's definitely not. So y'all have fun with this. Arkansas, but by the time they play Georgia, it'll have been 1,064 days since they have won an SEC game. 1,064, if I did my math correctly.
We're not going to double check your math.
What is the percentage chance that Arkansas wins an SEC game? Because they're all SEC games. What is the percentage chance Arkansas wins a game this year? We'll start with you, Scotty.
Gosh, so they're playing 10 games. I could see them winning 2 games, so I'll probably give them a 20% chance.
20% chance that they win a game?
Yeah.
Okay. If you have them winning 2, though, then you feel like you should go higher than that.
Maybe. I don't know. Like, I feel like one of the games that we feel fairly confident, or I don't know. I don't even know if you could go as far to say fairly confident, but you think Arkansas might be able to fight is Mississippi State. Arkansas had a really tough time defending Kylan Hill last year, and now you're down 3 guys who are either on an NFL roster or on a practice squad, and you got some questions at linebacker. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll go back on the 20%. I'll probably go. I'll go 50%. Like I think they'll win an SEC game. 2 might be pushing it. We'll see. But yeah, I'll reverse course. I'll go probably 50%. Sound like Clay Henry going 50-50.
50-50, man.
All right, Matt.
I don't know how you equate this to, I mean, the thing I think, and by the way, that Mississippi State team, I think they lost 3 of their starting offensive linemen from last year. And so that's, that's something to watch. And both of the teams have different coaching staffs. And so I don't think all things are equal. I think that because of the virus and the potential that it has to knock out possibly even large numbers of starters on each team, I think it would be difficult for me to envision that Arkansas would go winless in conference play this year. So I'm going to say about 45%. I think that there's a pretty good chance that because of the virus and because I think they're going to be better coached this year, if you listen to what the coaches are saying this year versus what we've heard the last couple of years, and you don't come away thinking that this team is better coached, I don't know how to help you. I think that this is a completely different coaching staff, a much more focused and thorough coaching staff than they had the past couple of years. And so because of that, I don't think they're going to lose all their games. And then you throw in COVID on top of that. I think, I could see this team maybe winning 2, 3, maybe even 4 conference games this year. That wouldn't surprise me, just because I think this is going to be such an unpredictable year. Just look at what's already happened. Look at what the Sun Belt did against the Big 12 in whatever week that was of the college football season. Who could have seen that coming? So I think this is going to be kind of an unpredictable year where you see a lot of, seesaw.
By the way, Arkansas State had to postpone their game with UCA, but did y'all see that they went in to Manhattan, beat Kansas State, but they had, y'all are going to have to help me, was it 8 starters that weren't able to play?
I think there were 13 guys on their 2 deep.
On their 2 deep, and I think it was 8 starters, yeah. And that's just their
Kansas
2 deep.
State.
Yeah.
Yeah, because one of those guys that wasn't out was Jay Adams.
Yeah, exactly. And you needed to throw the ball to Jay Adams.
It's interesting to me.
Quarterbacks.
It's interesting to me now that the winner of Arkansas State's 2 games have then had to turn around and postpone their next game because of positive COVID tests.
You said it, Matt.
There was a party bus in Memphis, though, right?
Maybe
that's the report, right?
That's the unconfirmed, confirmed report. From
it sounds to
Memphis.
me like what has happened at A-State is that maybe one position's gotten hit hard. Maybe hey, all you got to do is maybe
like in that release the other day.
What if you got 5 quarterbacks and 3 of them are in quarantine? Then all of a sudden you can't play anymore because you don't have enough quarterbacks to take on your roster, or 3 out of 4 quarterbacks or something like that. So it just goes to show you how untenable the situation is potentially. You get one position knocked out by this, and those guys are around each other a lot. Man, I could see some games getting postponed, for Arkansas and other SEC teams this year. I'd be real surprised if there's not.
I agree with you, Matt. All right, moving on. Next question. We'll start with you, Matt, this time. It's been well documented that Traylon Burks did not score a touchdown last year.
At least not one that counted.
Correct. What is the percentage chance that Traylon Burks doesn't, if I could say it correctly, what is the percentage chance that Traylon Burks scores not only 1, but 2 touchdowns this year in 2020?
Oh, 77%. I think, that was such a kind of an overblown statistic last year. Number one, he had at least 1 touchdown called back because of a hold on the other side of the field. And then there were 3 or 4 or 5 instances where he caught a pass inside the 5 or 10 yard line that set up a touchdown the next play or a couple of plays later. And so that was, I think anybody who's concerned about his, quote, lack of production from a touchdown standpoint, you didn't pay attention to what happened. You didn't pay attention to what happened last year. He put them in position to score some points. I'm not going to say a lot of points because they didn't score a lot of points last year, but he put them in position 5 or 6 times to score some touchdowns. And I think that's where fantasy football and some of these other things may cloud the reality of what's going on in a game. You're so focused on, well, this guy didn't score this many touchdowns, or this guy. Treylon Burks was still a really productive receiver last year and did a lot of good things for the team. And I'd be surprised if he doesn't score some touchdowns this year.
Just off the top of my head, like I'm thinking of the times that he put Arkansas in position to score. Like he didn't score, but he put Arkansas in a good spot. It was like
well, there
Kentucky,
was the KJ Jefferson touchdown run.
Yeah, so there's Kentucky punt return, Texas A&M punt return, and then there was a jump ball that he won at LSU. There was Western Kentucky. Like that's just like 4 or 5 right off the top. I'm going to go 100% because he's housing one on punt return, and he's not going to go 10 more games without a receiving touchdown. It's 100%. It's a wrap.
I was hoping somebody would go 100%. I love it. It's on tape now. You can't go back, Scotty.
You've got a very competent quarterback, good arm, and I mean, early in camp, Sam Pittman was like, yeah, we understand that we have to find ways to get the ball in his hands. Like he's earned that. And, I found this website called SEC StatCat, and Treylon Burks created more receptions last year than any of Arkansas's other receivers. Like, for example, like the ball against Auburn that he caught across the middle of the field. He reaches back with his left hand, taps it to his right, comes down with a catch. Like he's capable of making those kinds of plays too, on top of like the ordinary. He can just beat his man over the top. So, yeah, 100%.
Heck, he could maybe even do it in half the season if Arkansas utilizes him the way that they're supposed to. All right, moving on. Next question, we're going to go to the defensive side of the ball. Dijon Harris. This was documented earlier in this podcast. He led the team last year in tackles at the linebacker position. So his thought to be replacement is going to be Bumper Pool. Does Bumper Pool lead the Arkansas Razorbacks in tackles this season? Or the percentage chance that Bumper Pool leads the Arkansas Razorback defense in tackles this season? We'll start with you, Scotty.
Yeah, I think it's probably a 75 or 80% chance he does. He's been really productive. Like last year, I'm not sitting here looking at the stats page, but he was probably, I would guess, top 2, top 3 in tackles last year.
He was second.
Second, yeah. So Bumper's been a productive guy, I think, throughout his career, and he's gonna have, as long as he's healthy and stays on the field, he's gonna have an opportunity. They're like, he's kind of the veteran. He's not the captain, but he's the veteran in that linebackers room, and he's got a nose for the football. He's a tough guy. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't lead Arkansas in tackles this year.
I'll go with maybe 60%. Again, I'm not convinced that he's going to play quite as much as some people are. I could see somebody potentially challenging him for some playing time. The thing interesting to me too is that in the past, I don't have the stats to back this up necessarily, but I feel like Barry Odom's teams have had a lot of tackles from the safety position. So maybe does one of those roving safeties come in and make a lot of tackles? I don't know. So I think that there's probably a better chance than not that Bumper Pool will be their leading tackler, but I don't know that I would say that it's just a great chance.
I mean, Bumper's a guy, he played over 600 snaps last year. So it's not like he's unaccustomed to playing a bunch of snaps. I'm curious to see, if he'll be able to stay on the field with probably an increased role with Scooter gone now. So I feel like he's more so than anybody else. I feel like he's stepping into Scooter's shoes, and he's got a history of playing a bunch of snaps. Like he played 340 as a freshman. That's a lot for a freshman, and then he basically doubled that the next year. So, I'm on the Bumper train here.
Wasn't Harris injured his freshman year? Didn't he get a lot of snaps because of that? I feel like Harris may have hurt his hand or something and didn't get to play a lot that year.
Scooter's freshman year?
No. I'm talking about Bumper Pool's freshman year.
I cannot remember.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
All right, guys, we got a few more. I'm going to shelve them as we move on and talk about something else. We'll probably come back to them next week, along with next week, and give a little tease here. I've got some 2019 Arkansas football trivia. We're going to test your knowledge a little bit about just some things that happened in 2019 and see if y'all remember. Or, for most Razorback fans, they try to forget. So we're going to bring up painful memories. And we'll also give you a nice little Georgia preview next week, as it's the podcast before game day. All right, guys, let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about basketball, as there's big news coming out that college basketball has a start date. Scotty wrote a story about it on Whole Hog Sports. The story is in the link in this description, so make sure to go check it out there. You can click on the description. The link will be right underneath the basketball story. But Scotty, start date. When is our college basketball starting?
Yeah, so the start date was like the main thing that came out from that, what was it, the Division I Council voted on yesterday or on Wednesday. So the college basketball season starting November 25th, which is, we talked about it previously. That was the date that was proposed by the oversight committees for men's and women's college basketball. So you got a little bit later start date, which if you're looking at Arkansas's known non-conference schedule, that kind of, I don't know if it eliminates it as a whole, but like the Oral Roberts season opener and the Las Vegas event doesn't look like those are going to happen. The dates could change, obviously, but there was a lot more, I thought, that came out than just the November 25th start date. Like the minimum number of games for consideration for the NCAA tournament was cut from 25 down to 13, so that basically cut in half. And preseason practices can start October 14th, and teams are going to have 42 days to practice a maximum of 30 times. And so between Monday, which is September 21st, through October 13th, players can take part in like strength and conditioning meetings and skill work and all that, up to 12 hours a week. And I guess they called that like a transition period.
Similar to what football had in early July.
Yeah, so September 21st to October 13th, guys can get in 12 hours of work a week. And so and then once October 14th hits, players can go up to 20 hours per week, and they got to have one day off. So there was quite a bit. There was quite a bit there. And then, like Matt mentioned a little bit earlier, the D1 Council voted to kind of make Election Day an off day.
Every year.
Yeah.
Well, and the other thing that you didn't mention, Scotty, is that now I think isn't the maximum number that a team can play is 27 games as opposed to 31.
Yeah, it drops by 4 games.
So that's a big deal. I think for Arkansas, this pretty much wipes out 5 games potentially, because Scotty mentioned the ORU game. Yeah, the 2 games in the Las Vegas tournament. But then what a lot of people don't realize is that as part of that Las Vegas tournament, there would have been a couple of on-campus games that were, used to make that a 4-game exempt event. So those games are probably off the table too. And I could see the Las Vegas tournament potentially, maybe they change their dates by a week and they create some sort of I hate using the term bubble, but that's the buzz term now. It's some sort of bubble type atmosphere,
a controlled environment.
Yeah,
I think, is that what they're trying to spin it as now?
Yeah, maybe they're able to do that in Las Vegas. So I just looked at their website; they still haven't mentioned if there's anything, on their end to change. And I'm sure it may be a few days before we hear from them, because it's pretty significant to change the season by 15 days. I personally like college basketball season starting later. I hope this is something, you talk about when we get out of this COVID era, what are going to be some of the long-lasting side effects from everything that has changed and happened. I really hope one of the things that happens is that we have a later college basketball season start. I really don't like how college basketball begins now as early as November the 5th. When you still have 4 or 5 regular season football games. When I was a kid, I can remember that the games wouldn't start until the week of Thanksgiving, sometimes after Thanksgiving. And that, to me, is when college basketball ought to be starting. Maybe you don't play 31 games. Maybe you only play 29 games in a regular season. And, maybe there's a couple of weeks there where you see this every year. You get to December. Yeah, you have that week where you've got finals where you don't have a game, and that's understandable. But it always seems like there's maybe another week or two. Didn't they have an instance last year where they had like a game, then 6 days off,
like
a game,
Saturday game,
8 days
a
off.
Saturday game, a Saturday game. Yeah,
and
it was
so
crazy.
I feel like maybe they've stretched out the preseason too far, and I think that you might see from some teams that they're not hitting their rhythm and their stride until they get into conference play in early January, because that's when they start kind of getting into that 2-game-a-week routine. They're not doing that a lot in the preseason, or I'm sorry, in the non-conference portion of the season. So I kind of hope that this is a maybe not as late as November 25th, but I kind of hope that this is a side effect that we can see down the road, that college basketball season starts later. I'd love to see that. I know that.
I don't know. Speak for yourself. I like how basketball season starts because
Seth, I mean, think about this. Arkansas played Bucknell.
Yes.
In the season opener. I don't know. Maybe was it Bobby Portis' sophomore year? Or it seems like they had a good team that year. Maybe I could be getting my years off. It could have been the Macon Barford team. Bucknell was a really good basketball team. I think that team made the NCAA tournament. They were the preseason favorite to win the Patriot League. Everybody knew that was a good game. They put that thing on a Sunday afternoon in the middle of football season, and you had 5,000 people out for it. And that was a good team. You just don't see, in my opinion, for these early season games, and with very few exceptions. When Indiana came in here in November a couple of years ago, that was an exception. But even then, I think the attendance was, Scotty, 16,000, 17,000, something like that. You're just not seeing people turn their attention to basketball during football season, even when the football team's not any good. I just think that they ought to push this back 3 or 4 weeks, because I think that then that kind of gives a basketball team, which is the second most or the second highest profile sport on your campus, and in some cases the most high profile sport like at Kentucky or Duke, it gives a chance for them to kind of take the spotlight, as opposed to having to share it for the first 4 to 5 weeks of their season.
I think that schools are getting smarter about those games, say with Bucknell or with a non-power, of they're putting them on a Friday. I can think of a game Arkansas played against something Indiana. I can't remember. No, it was Fort Collins. Fort Wayne. That's what it was. And they put it on a Friday. And
before a football game.
So that way you can make, and I remember somebody in my family came up, made a weekend out of it, like making those things happen. And yeah, it's kind of spread out at the beginning of the season to where you might have the first 3 weeks of the season, you're only playing 1 game a week. But I think that helps kind of ramp up the pace to where, all right, you play a game and you finally know something about your team playing somebody else. And I think that helps the development of these guys and them not having to sit there and play against each other every single day or every single week.
I get what you're saying. I just don't like it. I think that, November the 5th, people are still focused on college football. They're still focused on high school football. I mean, how many times have we seen where Arkansas started the season on a Friday night and it's gotten preempted on some of the Razorback Sports Network affiliates by high school football games? That shouldn't be happening. I think that they ought to push it back by about 2 or 3 weeks and start this thing closer to Thanksgiving.
Valid point. All right, guys. Let's wrap it up here. Before we forget, I want to mention that Arkansas soccer is going to play. They have their schedule out. They're the preseason number 1 team. I'll let
the SEC.
In the SEC.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes. That is a very good qualifier to put in there. Preseason number 1 team in the SEC. I'll let Matt talk a little bit about that, and then we're going to wrap it up talking about our Pro Hogs in the NBA series.
Well, they won the SEC last year. They're the preseason favorite to win this year. They've got 5 all-conference players back from their team last year. The only all-conference player that they don't have back is their goalkeeper. I think they had something like 10 or 11 shutouts last year. Now, I think the goalkeeper a lot of times will get more credit than maybe they deserve for the shutouts. There's a lot of things that happen in front of them that a lot of times keep the ball from getting back to that part on the field. It's a good team. I think they're going to have a good year. Qualify that with as long as they're not hit hard by COVID quarantines. They're going to play LSU on Saturday at 3 o'clock out at Razorback Field here on the campus. It'll be the first game, y'all, on campus since March the 11th. And that was the day that the baseball team played Grand Canyon and the softball team played Kansas in a doubleheader. So I'm going to be out there. I think it'll be I like soccer. I think it'll be a really cool deal to be back out there at a sporting event on campus this weekend. And I think this is going to be an interesting team to watch. They've had a lot of success the last few years under Colby Hale. Like we said, they won the SEC last year for the first time. They've been the runner-up at the SEC tournament 4 years in a row now.
Buffalo Bills.
Yeah.
Even worse than the Buffalo Bills.
Well, I don't like tournaments, frankly. I would rather see an extra week put in the regular season and not have a tournament setting, and that goes for every sport. I don't like the SEC baseball tournament. I don't like the SEC basketball tournament. I don't like the fact that we use tournaments, and if a team can get hot or cold over the course of 3 days to determine who should be a conference's representative in a national tournament. I don't think that's the right thing to do, especially when you get into the non-Power 5 or the non-Group of 5 type leagues that are only going to get one representative in the tournament, and you might have a 14 and 18 basketball team that's going to be a 16 seed and lose by 40 in the first round to a 1 seed, whereas you might have had a team from the same conference who went 25 and 3. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I think this is going to be a good soccer team to watch, and I think they should have a good season. And I thought it says a lot about the program that Colby Hale has built that the SEC coaches picked them to win the league. I think this is the first time they've ever been picked to win the league, even though they won it last year, but it's the first time that they've ever been picked to win it. I think they were something like 6th going into last season.
Make sure to head on out to Razorback Field, watch the soccer team. I've watched quite a bit of the soccer team working for Razorback Sports Network when I was in college. And Arkansas soccer is a unique brand of soccer, women's soccer. Yeah. They're physical. They're interesting.
It's like the soccer equivalent of 40 Minutes of Hell.
Mm-hmm.
It really is. It's a pressing type style that makes the other team uncomfortable, and you see a lot of mistakes that are made that can lead to breakaway goals for Arkansas. And gosh, you get one breakaway goal in soccer, and that might be the difference in a game.
All right, guys, let's wrap it up with our Pro Hogs in the NBA. It's been a great series written by all of our guys here at Whole Hog Sports and the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. Really interesting to see the pedigree that has come from the University of Arkansas and gone into the NBA. The link for the last 2 stories will be in the description, which is number 2, Joe Johnson, and number 1, Sidney Moncrief. It's really hard to argue between who should finish first and second there. It's probably a difficult choice, a choice that had to be made, though. And we'll give it up to Scotty first. What has your opinion of the series? And I know that you didn't really get to watch a whole lot or you didn't get to watch Sidney live, but Sidney versus Joe, what's your opinion, Scotty?
Oh, I'm fine with the way that the list played out, and Bob and Tom have done a great job with this. The Alvin Robertson story. Or is it Alvin Robertson or Robinson? Yeah, Alvin Robertson. Yeah, I learned a lot reading that story. I wasn't probably as familiar with Alvin's story as maybe most people are. That was a pretty eye-opening read from Bob. That was a really good story. The Joe Johnson story, like he's not ever going to he's never going to hang it up. Like I just feel like Joe Johnson could probably be like Julio Franco in baseball.
Or Tom Brady.
He could probably hoop until he's 50. Like he's 39 right now, and he's thinking about going to play overseas just because he's still got an itch to play.
He said there were some NBA teams that were interested in maybe adding him for 12
Yeah,
to 15
I mean, you
minutes.
watch him in the TBT. He's the best player on a team that's been in TBT that's won it like more than any other team. I mean, he was unbelievable to watch in TBT at his age, and he's the go-to guy on a team. I mean, he's just I don't really know how to put it into words. Like he's phenomenal. I hope he plays forever. I'll never get tired of watching him.
Vince Carter played for what up until
this year.
This year, and
he had to quit because was he with the Hawks? They didn't make the bubble this year.
I think so, yeah.
And so he was like,
yeah, because I remember there was a big deal made about him playing on the same team as Trae Young, and Vince Carter was in the league before Trae Young was born. I think that's right.
That's what it was.
I mean, but Vince Carter's probably 4 or 5 years older than Joe Johnson.
Yeah,
so
I think he's in his 40s.
It's not inconceivable to think that Joe could get back onto an NBA roster. The interesting thing to me is that there have been a lot of pretty good basketball players who have come out of Arkansas who's had success in the NBA. I think about some of the guys that didn't make the list. Andrew Lang was one who, he didn't have a great NBA career, but he had a long NBA career. I think he played about 12 years, mostly with the Hawks. And then you think about the ones who did make the list. Joe Klein had a long career, and Oliver Miller, had a pretty good career. I think people forget just how effective, might be the word, of a career that Corliss had. Corliss was the NBA Sixth Man of the Year, and I thought it was interesting that what have there been, like 46 or 48 players who have ever won an NBA title and an NCAA title, and he's one of them. He's the only one from Arkansas who's ever done so. But I don't think you can argue at all with the top two, and it's hard to argue even with number one. Moncrief, he's the only Hall of Famer that the Razorbacks have ever had. Yes, his college career played into his Hall of Fame status, no doubt, but in my opinion, the golden age of the NBA was from about the early to mid 80s through maybe the end of the 90s, through the end of the Jordan years in Chicago. And early on in that time, when you had Larry Bird and Magic Johnson and Michael Jordan and a lot of other great offensive players, Sidney Moncrief was considered the best defender in the NBA. He was a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. I think he might have even been the first player to ever win Defensive Player of the Year. Was a 4- or 5-time All-Star, considered one of the really great defensive players in the history of the NBA, and so I think he had a great career, and he's deserving of number one. And I think Joe Johnson should be in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yes, he's played a long time, and yes, the game changed a lot. And it became much more offensively focused during his years. But I just think that you look at, just the totality of his career, he's a great player. He was a great player and considered, probably at one point, Scotty, you can help me, but, I mean, wouldn't you say at one point in his career, he was probably one of the top 10 to 15 players in the NBA during an era when you had LeBron and Carmelo, and I mean, you can go on and on, Dwayne Wade, a lot of Hall of Fame players.
Yeah.
And he was considered not as good as them, but maybe in that next tier below the elites in the NBA. I think he had a Hall of Fame career. I don't think he'll be there anytime soon, but I could see maybe in 15 to 20 years, maybe a greater appreciation for what he did. And I really hope that one day he gets into the Hall of Fame, because I think he's had that type of year, or that type of career.
Yeah, he earned a nickname for the style of play that he's best at. Just just put me in the short corner and just let me go to work on something. Like the picture that's attached to the story, he's ISO'd on Russell Westbrook. Like that's Joe Johnson in a nutshell. Yeah, he could. I mean, you were talking about he's probably one of the 10 or 15 best players. Like he was probably one of the best just pure scorers in the league for a stretch of time too. And man, he's something to watch. I'd love to get a chance to check him out in TBT. I hope he has I hope he finds a fit. I hope he gets back on an NBA roster and he's still in good enough shape to, maybe play a role on one of those teams and not just kind of fall to the end of the bench, or he finds some success overseas.
I've had a lot of fun putting together this series, and it's been more than just basketball. We began this back in the spring when we did the top 10 Razorback football players in pro football. We said pro football because Lance Allworth had a great career predominantly in the AFL, and because Thumper Harris had played in the Canadian Football League for a number of years. But it began with that. We did the baseball series, and now we're finishing off with this basketball series. I think it really shows that there have been a lot of really good pros and maybe some guys who are forgotten who had good pro careers that have come out of Arkansas, and it's been really fun to look back on that, I think.
Going back to Joe Johnson too, like growing up, I wasn't like a big NBA fan, but my favorite player was Steve Nash. Joe Johnson was on those 7 seconds or less Phoenix Suns teams with Steve Nash, and he was a big part of the reason that I kind of latched on to Phoenix and kind of still do.
I can remember Joe Johnson's rookie year. He came to Boonville, Arkansas to do a promotional deal for the local Chevrolet dealership. And so it's pretty cool to see how far his career's come since that point.
From Boonville to overseas, Joe Johnson is a baller to be sure. All right, guys. Well, that's going to do it here for us on the Whole Hog Podcast. Good podcast today. Want to thank everybody that came along, from Scotty Bordelon and Matt Jones, and then all of our crew at wholehogsports.com, as well as Felix Jones for joining us for an interview during this podcast. Really cool to have him on as well to talk a little bit of football before football season kicks off. All right, guys. Well, for all of those guys, I am Seth Campbell saying so long, and we will see you back here next week to preview Georgia.